Today, before I move into our topic about graduation, I will say this with such gratitude. This weekend has many different significances assigned to it, and one of them, most definitely, is Memorial Day. It is a time to give thanks and gratitude for those whom we have known, whom we have loved, who have served us, and whom we have been in service with. It's family, it's military, it's health, it's everybody. It is an acknowledgement of service. And so this weekend is an opportunity to recognize both transitions and transformations that are a result of lives well lived, meaningfully given. We have a little piece in the back on the bottom of our newsletter about our mother. That's my sister, Lady Ann, back there, who made her transition 27 years ago tomorrow. And she taught us a lot. So I wanted to mention her name. So we give thanks to everyone, even those that we don't know, have never known, for who they have been while they've been here on this planet. Because we know whatever they did and whoever they were, somehow they've given a gift. So the other topic that's really up right now is this concept of graduating, of graduation, which is another kind of transition. And I had a lot of fun meditating and thinking about this idea all week. It begins with the symbolic taking of the cap that's on one's head and throwing it into the air, right? And in some places, in some scenarios, they say, don't do that, you can't. Whatever you do, we're not allowed to throw our caps in the air. Well, that just makes it more tempting. So I don't know how that's working, forbidding it to happen. The interesting thing about having a cap on one's head and then removing it, metaphorically, is that the way I thought of it was that you were taking the lid off. We are releasing that whatever that is that we've had up here, that we have allowed to hold us back, to limit us from our unlimited good. And so if you think about graduation in that way, we're taking this lid that we've had firmly on our head. My earlier meditation this week was like a manhole cover, something that's just so overwhelmingly burdening and keeping us back, and finding a way to just let that go. Then we access a connection that we've always had with infinity, with possibility. So in every graduation, there is often that regalia, which involves a cap. And there's also the moving of the tassel from one side to another to acknowledge that completion, and a lot of celebration. Another thing that is often worn in a graduation is a gown or a robe. And I was looking at the significance of robes, and there's everything from the beautiful, pure white robe symbolizing purity in many different teachings. And then there are other colors. Kind of funny, because I got ordained in a black one. And that was at the time when the Matrix was really big, and I thought I was so hip. I looked just like Neo, only, the girl version. I had this, it looks like very Franciscan Taylor thing, But they did some really not nice things with robes in religious history. So I thought, okay, so robes, won't go there. In terms of colleges and universities, it turns out that before they had their own buildings and campuses, a lot of classes were taught in churches, which were not heated. And so the students would wear these hooded robes in order to stay warm during their study time. And then there was also a movement towards uniform appearance as they moved through their education. It graduated into these delineations of what you're studying and with whom and in which college and what your levels of accomplishment were, all the way up to the doctoral level. And I kind of chuckled because I never really looked at that before. I got my own robe. It was from TJ Maxx instead of where you're supposed to get them, And I had a beautiful silk scarf that belonged to my mother rather than the one you're supposed to get. I just started wearing the thing with the symbols and the tassels and wearing white just because I did a beach wedding, not because someone told me, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. So a lot of funny things about robes, but one thing is true about robes, that when one person bestows a robe upon another, they're saying, we are one. We are one now in this thing. And so I offer you this robe as an acknowledgement. It's also like a mantle, as an acknowledgement of our oneness in this. That's pretty cool. Moving on from there, there's also always a diploma, right? Or some kind of acknowledgement of accomplishment. And that one, of course, simply symbolizes that that thing has been completed. And it's 100% for real. It's documented, and you can, it's a done deal. It's something that you can keep in your hand when you stop wearing the regalia that says, I did this. Moving on from there, what else do we have? Well, we have this idea that all of this period of learning takes place in some kind of a school. Now, Betty Ann and I were introduced to this person when we were much younger by our mom, who told us that this is Earth School, that what we're doing here is Earth School. And of course, that's not an original idea, but I know who we heard it from first, right? A Course in Miracles says that this is a required course, right? And only the time that you take it is voluntary. And we could add that, well, if you don't take it voluntarily, that doesn't mean that it won't happen. It just means that it'll be more difficult and comfortable than if you just said yes and said, show me the curriculum, I'm on board, right? Only the time that you take it is voluntary. And apparently, by the way, since we're all here, it would appear that we have volunteered to be in Earth School now. So there's always a curriculum. This is another corresponding idea, whether you're talking about a training program, a university, or just life on Earth. There's some kind of a lesson plan. And it's not one written by some pie in the sky, I'll do it for you kind of thing. It's one that is chosen and co-created by us. And then we go through it, because we said we would. And we may forget that we made that choice, because that just makes it more interesting, doesn't it? Then we have teachers. We have teachers. Okay, you remember, if you just look back on your academic life, you can say, oh, I loved Mrs. So-and-so. And I had a hard time with Mr. So-and-so. And I loved this class. And I struggled with that class. Oh, and my favorite coach was this person. And oh, that one was a toughie. Right? That's normal. We look back on our lives and we see the same thing, right? There are so many teachers, so many teachings around the world that encourage us to recognize each person with whom we connect and relate in any way is somehow a teacher for us. Our children arrive. They are not blank slates. They are not without knowing. Their knowing is pure and unobstructed until we begin to teach them otherwise. They're the real teachers. They're the ones who come in with their pure knowing, right? And there are those people who say, you know what, I don't like you. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And we have no matter what we do. I tried this. 3 letters of apology, 3 phone calls, a couple visits or whatever. No. Sometimes people will say, that's it. I've decided that what works for me is to pretend that you don't exist, so get used to it. And you have to let that be okay and wonder, how is that person a teacher for me? It's amazing. In this course of study, we start to say, okay, what in me is being brought to the surface for me to take a look at and to bring more into alignment with the truth of who I am. What in me is ready to learn, and what is that lesson right now? I remember I had a prayer partner in one of our classes many years ago, back in the late 90s, and she said, please don't use the word lesson, because that reminds me of being wrapped on the knuckles with a wooden spoon by the nun. Okay, how about we'll find another word? You know? But we all have teachers in life, don't we? And once again, if we voluntarily accept that and intentionally seek to understand whatever our opportunity for learning might be in that relationship and in that moment, we can get the gift and move along. There's even the possibility that we not only release ourselves from that construct, but we release the other person from the need to play that role in our experience. And we both get to go do something else. Isn't that a gift? So many of us are doing like letting go and forgiveness with people who are either off this plane or would like to think that we are. So that direct way of healing is not an option. You write letters and burn them, sit down at the ocean and whatever, make something up. But somehow find a way to say, thank you, my teacher, and let it go, because you let both of you go. So in addition to teachers, we have the principal. And in a school, of course, the principal is the most important, the chief, the man or chick in charge, whose job is to make sure that the whole thing runs smoothly according to the greatest vision for the school, for its mission, the fulfillment of its mission, and for the success, the safety, and the well-being of every student there. I remember clearly experiencing that guidance and that protection when I was in high school and I needed it. I had the need for that support. I was escorted from one class to another at one point, just to make sure, because there was someone who admired my singing so much back when I was 17 that I sort of had like a shadow, and it didn't feel very comfortable. And I didn't want to spend all my time with that person. And the principal said, no problem. We'll take care of this. So in an earthly sense, the principal has a guiding role. They identify standards and help to lead us to abide by them and get the best out of our experience together. That's spelled with principal, P-A-L, is how it's ended. Well, there's also spiritual principle, which is P-L-E. And that's almost like having that same idea, that same personality, that same quality within each and every one of us. You could say it's your higher self, your inner principle, if you will. It's that part of each of us that is in alignment with those qualities of spirit, creator, the absolute, whatever you choose to call it, which are eternal. They're unchanging. They can't be modified in a board meeting. They can't be voted in or out or changed in any way. They are just constants. That's what spiritual principles are. For example, the principle of life. And it has qualities, and it is expressed here where we live, in our environment, through us, in time and space, in all kinds of ways. But those principles show up in our environment, in our lives, in configurations that we call natural law. For example, we have gravity here where we live. Now, there's a different type or level of gravity on another planet. I don't know what it is because I haven't been there. And it's not my course of study. But I do know that there are natural laws in our environment, and when I abide by them, they work for me. And how do I know what they are? I kind of have an inner principle. We all do. There are rules in schools, right? I remember sitting in a general assembly in high school, and they said, you know what? We had to make a new rule this year. We don't like making rules. But sometimes somebody will do something that's just not in alignment with your safety or well-being, and so we have to. And so we've made up this rule And that's why we did it. And it's really to help you out. And here it is. Right? Well, similarly, in our spiritual lives, we have laws like the law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect. It doesn't say, I'll grant your wish but not yours, or this or that. It just gives us back according to what we believe, what we think, and what we feel, what we focus on long enough to get that energy moving, that creative process rolling along. And anytime we don't like what's showing up, all we have to do is redirect. Anybody who's in any behavioral field knows about redirection. You don't say, don't do that. You just redirect, redirect, redirect. So we have spiritual laws that work for us too, that help us understand how to operate most effectively and easily. And then we can talk to Deepak Chopra about the law of least effort instead of living with as much effort as possible, because our level of understanding is increased. So all of this stuff and grades, right? Grades from preschool all the way up, from being an apprentice to being a master, or whatever it is, any trade, any skill, anything. There are grades of learning. That's the same whether you're in school, literally or figuratively. But they all lead to some kind of a graduation. A graduation, and what is that? Birth is graduation from gestation. No? It is the end of that period and the beginning of another. Everything in life is like that. And perhaps, if we're smart, graduation is also an opportunity to stop for a moment and say, wow, isn't that great? Why not? Toot your horn a little. Say, look what I did. Celebrate having gotten somewhere. Allow yourself a plateau. Sit down for a moment. Have a picnic. Have a party. Because what happens is once you reach one point on your so-called horizon, is that then you look around and you got a new one. And you have a new place that calls to you. And you do it all over again. So stop and celebrate every one of those graduations in life. The completion of one thing and the beginning of another. Before the beginning of the other. Savor that time in between. There's an interesting thing. I said that this whole business was about graduation from limitation. And I'll tell you, limitation is putting a wall around something, putting a fence around something, maybe installing a gate or a valve. It depends on whether you're talking about livestock or water or air or what. But some means of containing something. And some means of keeping anything from getting out or getting in. Or regulating that flow. Right? So limitation is when the container is smaller than the supply. To a certain degree, we need that, right? I mean, you could graduate from limitation and either have a psychic break or just stop being alive. But you could also graduate from limitation by stopping trying to keep your whole life in your whole, enthusiastic spirit and every dream and possibility in this tiny little, place that's not big enough. It's like having shoes that don't fit. There are a lot of teachings about going to the infinite with a little thimble saying, I just need enough to get through this morning, But what if you'd like to have enough to get through the day and share with a friend? What if you'd like to have enough to get through the week so that you could think about something else? What if you'd like to have enough to just say, I am a person who knows that I always have enough? Would you live from a different place if you just knew that? That's graduation from limitation. You don't have to become the next Buddha, the next Christ, the next whatever. You don't have to. Because all of those great teachers and many more recent have said it's all inside of you. So you can stop hunting out there, right? Well, what happens in terms of limitation, of course, is that we try to put something really that we care about in too small a container. And how do we graduate from it? We learn about how those walls went up, those fences were created. We learn about how to open that gate or that valve and control the flow so perhaps we need to build a bigger boundary. Perhaps we need to have a bigger corral, if you will. Perhaps we need to have a gate that swings very nicely open and closed when we want it to. A valve that works in service to the amount of flow that we really desire and require. Create a bigger reservoir. We can do that. That's engineering. It's spiritual engineering. It's physical engineering. We can do that. When we understand how it works, it can no longer limit us. It's really that simple. And then we can graduate from being controlled by the small fence, the small wall, the rusty gate, the valve that won't open. Every cell in all of creation has a selectively permeable membrane. And somewhere, we do too. Our bodies already know this. They're doing all kinds of stuff while we're sitting here. But imagine if you got in touch with that selectively permeable membrane that Spirit Creator, the Absolute, gave you when you came here, that knows just what to let in and how much and how often, just what to let out and how much and how often, possibly is much greater than what you're trying to manage all by yourself. So to graduate from limitation would simply to be aware of how limitlessness really operates and our relationship to it. We always come back to this around here, that whatever any one of us desires, all we have to do is really know it. And once we know it, it becomes a part of us. And once it becomes a part of us, it's what we express. And when we come from that place, it's what we experience. It's a done deal. And you might work for 25 or 30 or 40 or more years to get to that single moment when you finally know. And you'll never have to go back. And it's possible that if you really set your intention to know this thing and be done with it, you can do it a lot sooner, right? You don't have to have all the mayhem. So that's what graduation is all about. We're going to just close our eyes and close this time together before we sing and so on in this way. There are some words of Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind and Spirit. And they were brought to us by Dr. Edward Viljoen. He was on a sacred trip, and a monk asked him, "Do you chant?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And he started saying this. So as you get it, I invite you to say it with me. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. Recognizing this truth, I know, and that each of us absolutely knows, believes, embodies, expresses, and experiences our own limitless beingness in greater ways. Because our level of understanding has been up-leveled. Because our knowingness has been increased. And there is nothing that the corresponding universe of matter can give to us but its equivalent. Therefore, I release my word in so much gratitude for the increase in every area of our lives that we experience as we go out from here because of this greater knowing. I give thanks for the greater joy of living, which is the outpicturing and the byproduct and the result of this knowing. Letting my word go, I simply release it into the creative medium, knowing it is already so, and together, as we open our eyes, we say, and so it is.